Sorry, we're all chatting, and you can hear us chatting. Just indicate if you cannot hear us or anyone specifically, and then we can adjust that sound. But we're going to kick start by everyone on the panel just introducing themselves and which organization or company they're from. So I'm going to start with Chevonne.
My name is Chevonne O'Shaughnessy. I run American Cinema Hits Fires. I'm located in Los Angeles. I do distribution worldwide, and I also produce movies. I produce movies here in South Africa, and I have also taken South African actors and brought them to the United States.
Thank you so much, Chevonne.
Thank you. My name is Keitumetse Lebaka for short. I'm the CEO of the Gauteng Film Commission, situated in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Great, thanks to me.
Hi.
Can everyone hear her? Yes?
Hi, I'm Hamisha, Daryani, Ahuja, an executive producer and director at Forever 7 Entertainment. I make Bollywood, Nollywood movies. If any of you had a Namaste Wahala postcards on Netflix, we bring the two cultures together.
Great, awesome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Am I audible? My name is Shirley Adonisi. I work from Multichoice. I am the current channel director for all the local entertainment channels, which all sums up to about 7 channels. So I'm responsible for running every aspect of those local channels from Multichoice.
Thank you.
Hi. Is this working?
Yes.
Okay, mic check 1 2 1 2. Okay, good. All right, my name is Mimi Bartels. I'm the co-founder of Anakle Films. You may have seen our logo everywhere. We have the hit film. Okay. Sorry. We have a hit film, The Black Book. I'm a producer. I'm discovering that I'm a writer. And I guess I'm a showrunner now, but that news will come later.
I like that.
Hi, my name's Maganthrie Pillay. I am a director. I've been producing, except I haven't taken a credit, so now I'm on a new journey to get that credit. And yeah, I've been involved in film and television, documentary. I teach film as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Let's just give them all a hand. Thank you, ladies. So I think just in introducing yourselves, what the audience can see is that we have a wide spectrum of women representing the different sort of spheres of entertainment. Some of you have been in front of the camera, behind the camera, financing what's happening the sets, but they're also involved in organizations and institutions that furthers and progresses the sort of female presence in film and entertainment. So the theme for today is women leading the charge. Makes us sound like soldiers, which is not too far off. But the first question that I kind of just, or topic that I want to unpack around women leading the charge and breaking barriers within the film and television space is something that I actually heard Kamala Harris spoke about in an interview. She said that when you're breaking barriers, something shatters, something falls on the ground, you can get cut, you can bleed through breaking those barriers. So leading the charge and breaking barriers is not as glamorous as it sounds as a theme. So what I first of all want to just chat about is, from your perspective and in your experience, what are the big and small changes, starting on the positives, whether they're big or small, or just very consistent changes and accomplishments of small acts that you've seen women do. So this can be anything from the gaffer to the director to the actress. However, and I'll start here with you, Chevonne, and then whoever can chip in. How have you seen women change, progress, and forward, whether they know it or not, the cause of women in television and film?
I've been lucky enough to be doing this for about 35 years. But I can say on set for the longest time, you hardly had any woman as directors. It was always a male-dominated production. And being the fact that now female stories are getting more aggressive, there are more channels, they're more responsible, females are now in the directing position. And they're great. I even had two of my directors or actors that were walking behind us, and the director was a female and I was a female producer. And he's talking to his friend, thinking we can't hear him, and he's saying, I've never been on a set where the director is a female and the producer's a female. It's so quiet. We get things done.
That tends to happen.
Yeah, things are happening. So it was really wonderful. I mean, I think women have a great voice. I think we are in the room now. It took a long time to get there, but we have female camerawomen. We got female scriptwriters. We got female directors. I mean, the leads in movies are now females. And you want to know why, ladies? Because at the end of the day, we're the ones controlling that remote control. And we're telling the men what is going to be airing on their TVs. And we want to see ourselves in everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, you focus very much on the business end of film, putting together those proposals, getting short films made, making those into features, so you get to see women from a different perspective as the hustlers, the producers. Can you shed some light on that perspective? Have you seen, are most of your clients still and partners still male? Have you seen any shifts in women in sort of the producing chair?
So let me start off by saying, if you look into statistics, right, globally and in South Africa, you still find that between 16 and 17% globally are still directors and producers. So we are making changes, but it's not at the speed that it should be.
Yeah.
Especially coming from a South African context where it's 30 years after democracy.
Yeah.
What we are doing as a very deliberate action from the Gauteng Film Commission is we have recently just opened up the poll. And in challenging the statistics, we are now prioritizing female-owned filmmakers in terms of funding, because if we do not do that, the stats remain the same. So for us, it is priority that we start challenging the gender inequality that is still predominant in the sector and in the industry. So most of our funding is now going to be directed, particularly 60% in this particular call for females in the lead. And it just happens that last month, or a couple of days ago, was Women's Month in South Africa. And we're starting to have more conversation to say where are the strengths and how can we collaborate with more partners who will therefore change the status quo globally.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's quite important, because as many talented producers, directors, actresses that we actually need, from a policy perspective, from an institution perspective, those kind of calls to be made. I know that the NMBF as well has a female in film fund as well, where they also work with women on a annual basis to bring in different voices. But if I can just go to you, Hamisha, you've been in front of the camera and behind the camera. Can you speak a little bit to the experiences in front of the camera, and then how that changed and transitioned when you moved as producer to behind the camera?
Hi, does that work? Yes. So I think it's twofold. I think that the story narratives are changing, and I think that that's important as well. Predominantly Bollywood has that misconception. Maybe in the past it wasn't a misconception, that it was predominantly male dominated. I mean, if you watch the 90s style Bollywood, you'd always have the actor as the protagonist, and you'd be dancing around him. So when I made my first movie, Namaste, I wanted to flip it. As much as I'm all about chivalry, and I love love. I love watching love and the romance. It was very important that my protagonist was a woman, and that she had to be the main character. She still danced around trees, but she still saved the day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was having both of that, and I think that that's why it's also important to have female filmmakers directing, producing. Because if we're putting out content, as you said, the woman's controlling the remote control, why would we have a man make something a woman's watching? Because, there's so many things, like how does a woman fight? How does a woman argue? How does a woman love? A woman would know that.
Yeah.
And to speak to what you said as well, when I was on set in Mumbai, yes, I have to say majority of my team were men, But I had that feedback from my hairdresser when he was working on me. He was working with me, and he was like, "The set is so calm, it's so gentle, but you're getting it done. No one's yelling, no one's screaming. We meditated on the set, you know." And he's like, "So we are learning that we don't have to scream or shout, and in order to get something done."
Yeah.
So on the flip side, I have to say, I speak for Nollywood as well. I think there are so many superpowered women. I don't feel, I mean, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't feel like there's, I mean, most of my head of departments were women. Most of the top producers and directors are women. So I don't feel it's uphill battle in Nigeria. It is a little in Mumbai, but it's changing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone has seen that clip or interview of Reese Witherspoon where she speaks about how every script she's ever gotten, one of the lines is, "What do we do now?" One of her lines is always, "Well, what do we do now?" And so the female characters are always confused, needing help, needing to be rescued, and is the reason why she kind of stepped into the role of producer, trying to take control of the narrative, so that we can actually have women who are well-rounded as opposed to damsels in distress, right? So I'm going to quickly jump to Mimi and then I'll come back to you, Shirley, because you mentioned that you're in the screenwriting chair. And so from a narrative perspective, is this something that we like consciously have to change? Like if you're in a writer's room, do you have to consciously think about your female characters and say, am I thinking about this woman in a three-dimensional way, or is she being written as sort of a typical stereotypical type of character? Do we need to be more intentional about it, or do you think it's just organically changing?
So, forgive me, I don't really like to do panels because I can be a tad blunt, so I'm just giving a disclaimer from the beginning. So, I'm not a feminist because I don't really know what it is. So I've never walked into a writer's room thinking I need to be intentional about. I just go around, quote unquote, what people call strong women. Everybody around me was strong, apparently. I wasn't in a society where it was defined as weak, strong. Because as a Nigerian woman, and tracing my heritage back to Congo as well, that's just who we were. So every time I walked into a writer's room, I just always thought, this is a woman and this is how she would react. Growing up, and I see on television, I see the Reeses go, what do we do? And we're sitting there in Nigeria like, we're gonna fix it, what's that? We're confused. Like, why are you asking the man what to do? Because on our side of the spectrum, it's very different. And to be honest, I'm very blessed to have a business partner and founder in that man that's reporting me over there, who already writes his characters as quote unquote strong women, because that's he knows. So we never walk into a room and say, "Oh, how is this person looking weak?" It's always been there. Many years ago during COVID, while I was in a distribution company, I used to get. It was very funny during COVID. All the Hollywood studios I was talking to kept saying, we need female-driven character stories. And I'm like, well, we have just the right thing for you. Because in Nigeria, like she said, we're kind of, running things over there. Because I was on a panel last year and somebody asked and said, or rather my panelists were saying like, oh, gender equality and women are not doing it. And I'm just sitting there like, this is awkward. In my side of the world, like even the box office of last year, 65% of the most successful 20 films were women. 80% were producers. So I don't really have these problems. So I've never had to think in that mindset. But then when I recognize it, I quickly fix that. But then again, it depends on what that story is. Let's not lie to ourselves. There are going to be those women in the stories that are the weak ones. They are the ones that, I forget what they call it in writing, manic, the characters where they're there to just lead the man to do the right thing. I forget what it's called in storytelling. There are going to be those women. Let's not ignore that part. But we do consciously have a responsibility to make sure that women are being represented. And it's going to be an ongoing battle, to be honest, but that's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in my early 20s, some 20 odd years ago, in Cape Town, starting out as a producer, when we were getting together in producers' forums, I would say 90% of the room was white male. You know, that was back then. So there's definitely been a shift. There's definitely been a transition, and I think it is because at some point someone became intentional about decisions and choices that they made. So I'm going to hop to you now, Shirley. Shirley, you've worked with broadcasters before, but you've also been a producer. So you understand the challenges of producers, you understand both sort of ends of the spectrum. Can you speak a little bit to the sort of intentional choices that Multichoice has made, your space that you've made to progress women in the sort of broader spectrum of film and television?
Sure. I think the one thing that I'm always intentional about with the team, with any new show that they come to pitch, is understanding the psyche of your character, whether it's male or female. Because in that way, you then understand their behavior or their reactions. Women are no longer props to bring in the drama and the screaming and the fighting and the kind of frivolous behavior that we are portrayed to be, because we are supposedly so emotional.
Yeah.
Women have to endure a lot as mothers, as wives, from a young age. There's a lot of trauma that girls go through, and at some point it does manifest in some shape, way, or form. And understanding that character to that depth is very, very important, so that we portray women in a way that you understand and you can empathize with them. From a production perspective, on a typical production crew, the females will be the line producer, the production manager, the coordinator, and then the male becomes the producer and makes all the decisions. And what our team does really well is when we identify a really great content producer or a camera person or a writer, we are the ones that would encourage to say, so Kaye, when are you going out on your own? And the answer will be, oh, I'm not ready, I couldn't do it, I could never run a company. And the commissioning editors, the senior managers, identify that talent. And through encouragement, through being very brave, we have had many successes of Multichoice, of women that started off as part of a content director and they now have their own companies, and we are commissioning them for content. It's the same for drama, when in the writers' room, who are the females that are writing the story, because there is room for masculine and feminine energy. And even on set, like she said, there's room for masculine and feminine energy. And let's be honest, half the time when something goes wrong on set, there's a female somewhere running around trying to fix it. So we have, I believe, a certain part of the brain, and you can call it multitasking, but I think there's that insight that we have, that you see the bigger picture, you see what the issue is, and you problem solve, not from an ego perspective, but for what is good for the production. So don't feel like you need to be a man or be hard. You embrace your femininity, because that energy is important in this rat race of a world that we live in. But it also helps us see the loopholes, and it also helps us to pause to ensure that the next step is the one that needs to be taken, and it's not from an ego perspective. So I think, I could go on, but authenticity is important. As a broadcaster, identify the talent, talk to the producer, and encourage them. And then, we've had so many great new producers, because we don't have enough female-owned production houses.
But I think it's also that very practical, once you get that crew list and you're going through it and you're checking who's who in the zoo, that you actually check that there's a very strong female component, number one, to that, the crew list, but also that your HODs are either half or majority female, and you become intentional about the choices that you make from a broadcasting perspective, right?
Absolutely, and it goes even deeper than that, because you may be female, yes, but your reputation and your work ethic, and I believe that if you have those in place, it's really a no-brainer. We don't choose just because we need, let's say, 50%. It's who is excellent, who is the best person for this particular piece of content.
Yeah.
And we found that women tend to step back and say, oh, the DOP has to be a male. No. And so we are the ones where we approve the key crew who's working on this. This kind of show needs a certain touch, maybe it's a sensitive subject, and how do you treat that? So that the appointment of HODs for us is very, very because the work ethic has to be in line with our expectations.
Yes. There was something else that you said that I just want to pick on, where you say women often say, am I ready? I'm not ready yet. I'm not sure, whereas with our counterparts, they'll go for it, They'll just do whatever, and they'll think about it later. We often think about things and make lists, and no, I first have to reach this goalpost and that goalpost before I can do it. But I think one of the things just coming out just in the very few minutes here is sometimes you just have to go and take your shot, shoot your shot and just do it. So I'm going to just hop to Maganthrie. Maganthrie, you have been involved with SWIFT, with the Cape Film Commission, the Durban Film Mart, the Independent Black Filmmakers Collective. So you're behind the closed doors, listening to a lot of the conversations. Besides the fact that you're involved in the industry, you understand what's being discussed. Are there any insights that you can provide to us where topics or decisions or choices that we need to, in the audience, understand and know about and progress from the collectives and the boards and the institutions that you've been involved with, that we need to understand this is how we move forward practically? Because we can have a great discussion and talk about how we should be involved in film, but what are those practical next steps for a young budding female producer moving forward? What's step one?
Step one is write it down. Don't be afraid that someone's going to steal your idea. The truth of the matter is, a lot of people, they can watch television or watch movies and they may see a lot of women, but they may not know what the behind the scenes looks like. And I think people often get confused about representation and what happens behind the scenes. And in all honesty, yes, we can have black HODs, but how many women are in technical positions?
Yeah.
For me, until we have a significant dent in that technical section, we're very far off. Women are always encouraged to be producers, and literally it starts at film school. As decisions are being made, women are often moved into producing. Maybe editing, if you have that inclination. But in general, women are pushed to producing and very few other areas. So, and because I teach film as well and I speak to a lot of young graduates, they tell me their journeys of having to fight to do cinematography. But I've also seen the battles that women experience with technology and overcoming that barrier. So there's so much we don't see. There's also the culture of film, which is a major barrier, where you don't feel like you belong. And it does take, absolute disregard for how you may be treated. And to have your goals and to say, I'm doing this despite what you think I should do. In fact, a young woman I spoke to was talking about the first time she went on a set. She was in the camera department and the DOP didn't even speak to her directly, but reported her. And at the time, there was no space where she could even say, hey, I don't know what we're talking about here. I don't know what this issue is. And I can say definitely with the organizational intervention, certainly with SWIFT and Safer Sets, there are issues around just safety. And again, the invisible things that we don't see. Who has the power? Where are you in the hierarchy? And film is very hierarchical. I don't care what you say. Your position determines your power and your hierarchy. If you're down there, you may not have a voice. But as producers, I think that's the first port of call, is to create an enabling and safe space. So no matter what your position, if there's anything that you're uncomfortable with, there is a space for you to speak. But most producers, I think, certainly many women producers are aware that they want more women on, and they make that decision. There's often there's always an either or, like, oh, we want excellent. Like when you talk about transformation, getting more black people into positions, getting more black women, or women in general, people always bring up excellence as if they're mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And I think firstly, we all have to, as no matter what your field is, be excellent, continue with your craft. But as a producer, there won't be any change if you don't make that decision. But also, in terms of my previous experience, production managers and line producers actually are often the ones making the hiring decisions.
Yeah.
And nobody is looking at them. And nobody's challenging them. And nobody's saying, except if the producer has given them a directive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, as a producer, those are things you have to make decisions about.
Yeah.
But the first step is, find great crew, great collaborators, and surely you will make projects that you're proud of.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just wanted to give brief backstory. So I entered the industry in 2010.
Yeah.
And when I got into the industry, it was very male-led. This is back in Nigeria. And the first thing was I was sexualized. Because I wasn't going to sleep with anybody, I had to be a lesbian. That's what it was. It just couldn't be that I wasn't interested in it, that's what it was. So I left the industry and I said, I'm going to go do the work. I'm going to start from the beginning. So I'm going to start from the very bottom and work my way up to the top. So I came back fully into the industry after learning everything. 2016, I'm back in the industry. Now, I'm in the rooms having these conversations. So this story is on two levels. One is, now I'm in the rooms, but am I the one who created the room? How many women are actually on the boards on these things? And then, even if you do have female producers, and you want to hire above the line crew, like DOPs, the first thing they're going to say is, can she do it? Even the females don't even believe that a female can DOP properly. Directing, it took a while to get there.
Yeah.
To say, okay, I remember when there was a film that a woman directed, we were, oh my God, a woman directed the film. This wasn't that many years ago, by the way. This is not slavery or ended 60 or whatever years ago it did in America or whatever it is. This is recent. So as much as we are saying that there's a shift in terms of there are producers that are more female now, is who are actually in those rooms controlling the money? The owners of the cinemas, how many are women? The owners of the distribution companies, how many are women? So as much as we keep, and I say that, to be honest, there's much strides that have been made in the industry.
Yeah.
But I think we forget about the whole ecosystem, and we're just focusing on, because the producers are the ones that come out and they take the pictures and all that business. Look at those lovely people in suits behind us.
Yeah.
And I think we don't talk about that enough.
Yeah. So the segues very nicely, and it's one of the questions that I sent you guys, which is not meant to be a negative question, but is around how we are our own worst enemy, right? And so not an external question, but more of an internal question. And if I can just use my own example, I would wait for permission to do something. Almost like I need someone to say, go and be blessed and do the thing, and now you are good enough, right? I don't know what changed, but the minute I hit 40, that went out the door. So that's gone. But what I want us to kind of just chat about a little bit is just from your observation, even your own personal journeys and growth within this industry. What are the barriers, the internal barriers that we also have to overcome as women to be able to, for lack of a better phrase, give ourselves permission to go ahead and conquer in this space? And this is just for anyone.
So for me, there's a lady I met here 3 years ago, my first meet, and she asked me, what do I do? And I had a top position. But she noticed this about me. I didn't notice it about myself. When she asked me, I cowered. Like my body bent, and I was like, oh, I do this. But she asked me something that really registered with me that day. She said, Mimi, why do I meet women from Nigeria and I ask them what they do, and they become shy all of a sudden to claim what they do? So I really held on to that. So I would say my worst enemy is my voice.
Yeah.
Again, thank for my partner. He's not paying me to say this, but whatever. When we decided to do this thing together, he said, Mimi, there are stories I'm sure you want to tell. That stabbed me in the heart because I never thought about it. I'm used to giving other people stories, but like I'm sure like within me there are stories that I have to tell. And I started writing. So when you said write down, I just started writing and things just kept flowing out, and now I've put my own show together like based on myself. I'm still scared, I'm not gonna lie, that I'm doing this, I'm like, this is my creation. But that's what I've had to fight within myself because I never was in that space to say it's okay. No, my voice matters. So that's my proof.
Yeah. Hamisha?
Thanks. So I think a big thing is growth. You just said 40. I feel like I just turned 40 last month, and my motto is freedom. The younger me, and I relate to what Shirley said earlier, is the masculine, feminine energy. The younger me, when I used to run restaurants back in the day, felt like I had to be a certain way, you know, exactly what the opposite has happened in the film industry. You know, you need to, if you're a boss, you need to be loud, you need to be aggressive, and especially being a woman, I feel like I have that insecurity that, you know, I need to make up for that. And it's so funny how growth has taught me that just being who you are, and it's something I just mentioned earlier as well, called gentle leadership. It's okay to have gentle leadership because like one look or one, you know, sort of message could go a lot further if you give authentic to your leadership style. And it's okay if that's what you go. So, like I said, I got that positive feedback when I was on set that it's okay. You know, you can get more done. I think we women tend to sometimes suffer from something called imposter syndrome. It's what it is, and you know, maybe it's coming from society, it's coming from culture, it comes from your childhood. So a lot of work comes out of that as well. That what were you trained to do? How were you trained to be? And what I'm loving now is I'm seeing the whole world is changing. There's a lot of growth happening, and as you grow, you just have more confidence in your skin and realize. You know, they say my favorite quote is, "If you want something done, give it to a busy person." I think women are the busiest people I know. So I'm a mother of babies, and if you're a mother of babies, you know how much work that is. I would take my babies to set. I was feeding at that time. It also sets an example to people that look, you can be a mother, you can be a wife, you can be a career woman. It's okay to have all, as long as it's balanced.
Shirley, I'm just going to go to you. I don't know if you remember a conversation we had in some ways at Multichoice a couple of years ago, when you were still head of programming and scheduling, and Nomsa had moved over, and this position was open, the one that you're currently in now. And we had a very funny conversation about shoulda, woulda, you know. And then when that happened, it's like you just made that transition immediately, but it took a mental shift to get there. Can you speak a little bit about that?
I think a lot of ladies have touched on it, but from, you know, when I started, I also had to deal with that level of racism. So I was black, I was new, who am I? She thinks she's clever because she can speak English. And so there was already an immediate rejection from the industry. But I worked for really wonderful producers who saw something in me. And as you go through the ranks and you are on set and you don't feel safe and the people are coming onto you, and as you reject them, you are rejected again because you're not playing the part. You are not part of the fun side. You're not fun. You always want to follow the rules. But I think I've had people in the industry who've been with me from day one, and they are the ones that have encouraged me to kind of stay on the path by being my authentic self. So when that position came up, it really wasn't about me at that point. It was about, are they going to reject me? Are the CEOs going to reject me? Because
I'm not part of the game. I don't take bribes. I don't do any of that, and I'm very inclusive. I'm a very soft leader. I don't scream at people, and that was the culture at the time. People would get screamed at and being humiliated. Even producers, and I didn't want to be part of that. So the shoulda, coulda, woulda was like, am I putting myself in the fire for the sake of a position?
Yeah.
Right? But it takes people like UK and the Ratos and the Asabelas who say, but you're a great leader. This is what you bring to the table. Don't you see that about yourself? And maybe that's what this company needs, someone like you, because then you shift the toxicity, right? And people start to flourish under your leadership. So there's always a degree of fear, absolutely. There's always a fear of rejection. But 6 years into it, I love it. And I know I'm good at what I do. And I know a lot of people are growing under me, and they are seeing my leadership style as something that is actually the way to go. You need to have that EQ in yourself, and you need to teach the young ones coming up about that important part of yourself. It's not about the MBA. It's also about your EQ and how you develop that over time. So, I'm 49, so I've also just had the benefit of wisdom to say I'm 50 next year. What is it about me that I want to continue to contribute to this beautiful space that we find ourselves in? And I have the quiet confidence in myself that whatever it is I choose to do, I'm going to leave a great legacy behind me, because I have stuck to who I am, and that's me, and that's the only Shirley that exists on this planet. And I'm not going to deceive her, and I'm not going to disappoint her by trying to be someone that I'm not.
Yeah, thank you so much. 49, good grief. You do not look 49.
I just want to chip in on the imposter syndrome, and that you find almost talked about when it comes to women. And I think the more we become aware of it, the more we can overcome it. But most importantly, I believe that as women, particularly in leadership positions, we need to find our crowd. Women who can support us, and women who can help coach. But also, as women in leadership, we have the responsibility also of mentoring others across the lower levels. Recently, we had a discussion of women in film in Gauteng Film Commission. And one of the prevalent things that you still hear is a number of women leaving the industry due to abuse, trauma on sets that is still prevalent. And we need to encourage, particularly in South Africa, more intimacy coordinators. And as women as well, how do we make sets, how do we make corporate safe? Not only from a sexual point of view, but also from a mental point of view. How do we become part in resolving the toxicity that you get, especially in the higher echelon? But how do we also master working with men for collaboration to open doors that we can't? Because truth be told, you still find ourselves where if you go put in funding application, men still get more funding than female. So how do we start strategic partnering as women, but also leveraging on what is there at the moment as part of generational change? So for me, collaboration, mentorship, coaching, being self-aware is also very important. Because we still judged whether we like it or not. There's still a lot of gender bias, whether you like it or not. And as women leaders, if we become very conscious about it, we can challenge it and make a change.
I think that's 100% true. I think at the same time, I also had the imposter syndrome. I used to always feel like I had to sound like my husband, because we did it together, and he was the male, so it's his voice that's smarter than my voice. And then all of a sudden, when I stopped, I said, wait a minute, that's not my voice, that's him. I got to figure out what my voice is. And when I was able to trust my own voice, that I had something to say, But in trusting my own voice was also making sure I was the best at what I did. I didn't let myself be convinced by somebody else. I taught myself, I learned things. I looked at contracts. I made sure that I went to the labs and I knew everything that was on the labs, what it meant to be deliverables. Even on production, I learned each and every one of those specs, and if it wasn't my part, I learned our books. I tried to become the best I could become, to trust in myself. So I recommend women, yes, you might not be trusting yourself, but teach yourself. Teach yourself to become the best person in your job, and then you'll have more confidence in it. And there's so many books right now out there. I mean, right now I would recommend AI classes. I'd recommend social media classes. Anything that can make you become the expert at that job.
I mean, I love that. And I think one of the things that I wanted to go back to that you said, Chevonne, is you were talking about an experience where someone said, this is such a calm state, we're not screaming at each other. You know, why do you think that is? I mean, I'm just saying this because I've heard that if women were to be presidents of every country, there wouldn't be any wars. I'm not sure if that's true. But why do you think that comment was made, and what did you learn from that?
I think it's a generational thing too. I think men were taught to yell. It was the way they took control. I mean, I can say as my husband and I worked together, and he did a lot of screaming in the office. I think now the newer generation are coming in, and women talk amongst ourselves more. You know, I could say even in meetings when somebody said, do you know the answer? I said, hold on. I would run out, call the person I know who had the answer, gather the answer, and then come back in the meeting. I never said to the person, oh, I don't know. No, I would find out that answer. And I knew how we could gather that kind of information instead of saying, no, I don't know. You know, women are very good at gathering information. Love that in men.
I absolutely love what you've also just said about if you don't know, teach yourself. Learn. Find out what it is. So I cannot believe that we have 10 minutes before we have to finish. And what I would like to do just to finish off is that very last question, which is, and just be very practical in terms of this advice. What would, from your experience, your POV, in the position that you're currently sitting in, what is your practical piece of advice to that sister in film or TV sitting out there, wanting to know how do I progress from where I am to where I want to be? I just want to say, if you're attending this market as a female or as a woman in television, that's already a major step because you're having conversations, you're networking. For me, I like talking to the people that I know. Networking is the worst thing in the world. Talking to people that you don't know. So actually just being here and putting yourself out there is already a major step in progressing your career to where you want to be. But from where you sit and from your experience, what is that piece of advice that you wish you had starting out in your career that you want to leave with the women and men in the audience?
I'll be very quick. I would say the first piece of advice I would give anybody, not just women, but anybody, if you're making a film or you're making a TV series, who are you making it for? Study who that person that's going to be taken to the complete, advertising, what their formula is. Everybody has a formula on their business. Know what that formula is and know how to get those people to go to that channel. It's your responsibility. I don't care if you're the writer, the producer, everything, it's all on us. We have to know what that is.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you. From a leadership perspective, I would encourage more women to take charge of themselves. Take the step, climb the ladder, challenge yourself, find like-minded people, and understand that not everybody will understand your vision, but surround yourself with people who will help you grow and become who you want to be. Don't be scared to approach funders. You know, as I'm here, I'm a funder. I get approached by more males than females. So take that upon yourself. We've got a responsibility to change the numbers, to change the statistics. There's still a lot to be done. And I believe we are the generation of women who can make the change.
Thanks.
Hi. So I have two practical points. One, the big one, fear. I think we all face it. That fear, that feeling in our tummy. I suffered from stage fright for a very long time.
Yeah.
The day that I decided to get up on that stage is the day my life changed. And I feel like if we can address that feeling, it's a feeling in our tummy, if we can flip it to adrenaline, it's nerves, embrace it. It's like, be scared, but do it anyways, because if you don't, isn't that scarier? And then the second one is the world momentum. Do one thing every single day that gets you closer to your goal.
Yeah.
Because in life, it's not practical to quit your job or to stop, bringing in the finances, what your day job is. But even if it's that big dream of, say, being an actor or filmmaker and you have a day job, in the night, sign up for that course. One thing every day, you'll get there. It happened with me. I was running a restaurant. A few years later, I had a Netflix original on my hands.
Yeah.
Doing that one thing every day.
Nice.
I agree with everything the ladies have said. But as you are climbing that ladder, you have to look after your body, you have to look after your spirit, you have to look after your psyche. We live in a very busy world, and there's a lot of stimulation that comes our way. And some of it may be toxic, and some of it you suppress because you're busy. It's the kids, this is a meeting preparation. And as women, we have to be doubly prepared. And then at the end of it, you neglect yourself.
Yeah.
So it has to start with yourself. Am I okay? If I'm not okay, do something about it. Am I tired? Am I at my best today? Should I take leave? We don't take leave, but we're entitled to leave. We take our laptops with us on holiday. We take phone calls when our children are doing their class plays. We're busy we take care of everybody around us by ourselves, and that's the wrong way around. Because if you don't take care of self, you're not going to achieve anything of what these ladies have said, because you are not in your authentic state of mind. And if you're not authentic, then you are pretending.
Yeah.
And that's exhausting. And you will burn out and you will get sick. So for me, look after yourself. Is this right for me? Is this what I want to do? And if it's a yes, I promise you'll find the energy to do amazing things. You'll be able to surprise yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, ladies, I'm sorry. The one advice I'm taking from this stage is Shirley, because I'm sitting by this woman. I cannot see one wrinkle, and I have 10 more years to go. So I will take that advice to my chest. Yeah. So what I would say, funny Chevonne, when you were talking about like going to learn stuff. So funny story, like my first producer credit, I walked onto the set because I had helped with the funding, and I was just there to check everything was okay. And then they go, oh, that's Mimi, she's the producer. And I had no idea what a producer did. So that night I went and watched all the YouTube videos I could find, and I read every article, and the next day I was a producer. And nobody on that set knew that that was my first film that I ever produced in my life. So I love that advice, thank you very much. What I have on my LinkedIn, which is actually true, because we know how LinkedIn goes, is I don't want to be good, I want to be great. Or whatever it is I do. And I think as females, as women, we're good at so many things, but we're not great at one thing. So my advice is, find out one thing that you're great at. You can still be good at other stuff, but find out one thing that you're great at. And my last advice is, there's no savior coming.
Yeah.
If that person is not coming, like, don't look at that phone. That phone is not going to ring. It's you.
Yeah.
You are your savior.
Yes.
Along the way, you will find your disciples, and then you will create your tribe. And then my last advice is that 3-person chat group you hear about, have it. I have a 3-person chat group that I have South African, I have Nigerian, I'm not even kidding. And they're all execs, and they're very strong women, and they've helped me find my voice, because we discuss and they tell me what's going on their side of the world, and it's the same thing that I'm experiencing, and I find that we're feeding off each other. So when I walked down the steps today, you walked down the steps today, that's fantastic, you're the best step walker ever. I feel like you need that kind of clan around you, and even if you are working with men, find those men that see you as you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the trophy, not the token woman in the room, but you as you. That's my best advice.
Thanks, Lynn. Gauteng?
You know, we haven't talked about directors much. But in any event, just from an industry point of view, a lot of people are not sure should they join organizations or not, but definitely they can be very supportive. There's so much to learn. So I definitely advise people coming up, jump into an organization. And if you have the experience and you're willing to share, jump in as well.
Yeah.
Because we need people with the expertise to share, who are willing to share. And the reality is, for directors, and my journey as a director, you know, that girl sitting in Chatsworth, Durban, who looked at the SABC guys in 1976, I was born before 1976, when television first came to South Africa, we had a few hours of English on one day and a few hours of Afrikaans on another day. There were no people of color on television. Eventually, there was the Cosbys. And so we've really come far.
Yeah.
Honestly, we have come so far on so many levels. And I always think we forget that as well. But in terms of where we could be, we should dream big, we should dream bigger. And for those coming up, start small, guys. You know, I meet so many young people who they're telling me about their series and their feature, but they haven't made a 5-minute documentary or a 5-minute fiction. I'm like, okay, have the dreams, but begin.
Yes.
Start small, make it. You will learn so much by making something and not just talking about it.
Yeah.
So make it, even if it's with your cell phone.
Yeah.
And, you know, back then, when I started out, an Avid cost R1 million. And so very few people had it. You could only go to a post-production house. And now you can edit on your phone.
Yeah.
The means of production is in your hand. You have no excuse to make content. Of course, it depends on the scale and where you want to be.
Yeah.
But if you don't have any experience, start small, make it. Do what you got to do.
Okay, and on that note, I'm going to thank all of the ladies. Thank you so much. We don't have time for questions, but you can descend on them and ask them questions if you have anything else. But let's just give them a round of applause and listen to thank